You'll want to monitor your fuel flow report to identify when a fuel filter needs to be replaced in your dispenser. To do this, take a look at the report. If it's showing green for a particular pump, you do not need to replace filters. If it's showing yellow, that means you should replace the filters in the next 48 hours or 2 days. If it's showing red, that means you should replace your filter immediately. When changing a filter, make sure you're wearing your personal protective equipment, including chemical-resistant gloves, goggles to protect your eyes, and your vest. Also make sure that you have cones out around the dispenser that you'll be working on with cone bars so that drivers know not to drive through your work area. In addition, you'll want to know where your breaker is for your pump because you will need to shut it off at some point, and you'll also need to have your lockout, tagout tags ready to go. One will be attached to the pump and one will be attached to the breaker box. When replacing a filter, look at your filter selection chart to determine the correct filter to use for the product in your pump. Once you've identified the correct filter to put in place as you're changing these out, you want to take a black permanent marker and write your initials and the date you changed the filter. This will help site personnel as well as technicians understand the last time the filter was changed. When you're ready to change your filter, you'll remove the lower door on the dispenser and you'll identify the filter that you want to change and make sure it's ready to go, along with the shear valve associated with that filter, because you will need to shut the shear valve down as part of this process. At this point, you want to shut down your shear valve and make sure that it is shut down. The pump power will remain on because you're going to test fuel flow. You'll come down to the appropriate shear valve and you will flip the shear valve to the off position. You should hear a pop indicating the shear valve has shut down. If that pop does not occur, just as before when we were working on shear valves, you can try it again and make sure that it does close properly. To confirm that the shear valve is closed, you're going to want to do a pump test while power's on and make sure that no fuel is coming through your nozzle into your bucket. So you will authorize the pump, you'll select your grade, you'll lift your nozzle, and you'll dispense fuel into your bucket. You don't need to do much because it should not be coming out with the shear valve properly closed. It'll just dribble or drip out. If you verified that shear valve has indeed closed, you can release your nozzle handle, hang it back up. For safety's sake, whenever you're working on a filter for a replacement, all of the shear valves should be tripped closed. This is to prevent fuel under pressure remaining in the lines and an employee potentially getting a hold of the wrong filter, loosening it, and getting sprayed with fuel under pressure and creating a bigger problem. So remember, it's not just the one shear valve you're closing when you change a filter. You're closing all of your shear valves, even though you're only working on one product. Now that you've confirmed the shear valves are off by doing testing with trying to get fuel into the bucket and there's no fuel coming out, it's now time to begin the process of shutting down your dispenser. Dispenser needs to be shut down at the electrical box using the breaker, not via the MMB. This is a safety feature. When you're in that breaker box, you can now apply a lockout tag, notifying people that you have shut down the breaker and that this pump is no longer operational. You also want to use a tag on your pump and make sure, for safety's sake, that people understand you're working in case you have to step away momentarily. Once that's done and the pump is confirmed shut down and power is off, you can start the process of changing your fuel filter. In your kit, you should have a filter wrench to help you remove the fuel filter in your dispenser. The filter wrench is designed to clamp onto the filter and help you loosen it up. It goes onto the filter, and you only have to twist it to start getting it loose. Once it's loose, you'll remove the filter the rest of the way simply by using your hand. But you have to be careful because fuel will start leaking from this filter and from the housing. Use your filter cup, place it underneath, and then loosen your filter to get it off of the threads. Keep the fuel filter cup steady to capture any remaining drips and avoid them getting down into the sump. You can take the filter out, but leave the cup underneath to capture the last of the drips. When you're done and there's no more fuel coming out, dump the contents of the filter into the bucket. Dump the contents of the cup into your bucket. You now have the filter removed that you wanted to take out, and it's time to put the new one in. There's a couple of checks you want to do first. On your old filter, make sure this black rubber gasket remains in place. If it is missing, it may be stuck on the housing flat surface underneath. You might need to look up there, feel with your fingers, and peel that housing off. You may have chunks of the filter missing, small pieces. You want to make sure they're not on that surface and get them off, because it will prevent a positive seal between the new filter and the housing. Now that you removed your old filter and you've confirmed there's no remaining pieces of the gasket on there and you have a smooth surface, this is your new filter. This is one of our E10 product filters for regular, unleaded, and premium. It's designed to capture 10 microns or larger in particle size. This is our standard filter for those products. You'll want to take some fuel and wipe it onto the gasket that's on the bottom end of the filter here, that's going to mount up to the mounting plate. That will create a good seal. Let's go ahead and put it on, and then we'll talk about how much to tighten it. So as you get this filter on, be careful of two things. Number one, don't cross thread it. If it starts binding up, back off and do it again. If you get a smooth mounting of the filter and it goes all the way up, you want to hand snug it and then go about a third, no more than half a turn past that. That should create a great seal for fuel to remain in the system and not leak. It's a good idea, once you're done replacing your filter, to double check later on and make sure you don't have a leak of fuel dripping down into your sumps because this was not tightened enough. Now that you've completed your filter change, it's time to make sure that you can pump fuel through your pump to your nozzle. Remember, you have to open your shear valves in order to make this happen. It's not just the shear valve for the filter that you replaced, it's the shear valve for all other products that you shut down previously need to be opened. This is not as easy as using your fingers like you use to shut the shear valve off. There can be quite a bit of pressure behind that shear valve, requiring you to use a basic wrench like this or an adjustable wrench to manipulate that arm. There is a nut on the end a wrench will fit on, and you can use it to move that arm up and engage your locking bar on that shear valve. Once that's done, do not put your cover back on. It's time to test and see if you're going to get fuel. You're going to want to go turn on the pump via your breaker, leave the lockout tag out there on the breaker, leave your tags on the pump because you're not quite finished. You'll come back out, you'll authorize the pump, you'll select your grade, you'll remove your nozzle, and you'll pump fuel into your bucket. As that fuel flow is established, it might take a few seconds to push air out of the line down to the fuel flow and make sure you've got a steady flow going into your bucket. Once that's achieved, you can stop the fuel flow by releasing the handle. You can hang up your nozzle. You also want to check and make sure that there are no leaks coming down on the side of your filters and no leaks evident in your pump. After that's done, you can replace the cover on the pump. You can remove your safety equipment from around the pump. You can remove your lockout tags from the pump and from your electrical box, and make sure it's returned to service.